All right, so here's the story. I was speaking in Sydney, Australia. It's a number of years ago. Actually, it was Gimel Tammuz. I think Gimel Tammuz was on a Shabbos. Gimel Tammuz was the Rebbe's Yortzeit. And so I was speaking in Sydney, Australia. A guy comes over to me, and he says to me, tells me his name. And based on his last name, he thought I would react. But it wasn't clicking for me. It wasn't ringing a bell. So he points out to me, he saw that I wasn't registering. He was like, my great uncle was Gershom Scholem. Everyone knows who Gershom Scholem was? Gershom Scholem was the professor of Kabbalah at Hebrew University. Gershom Scholem was a Yeke, a German Jew. At least publicly, outwardly, officially, he was not a big believer. He was not so religious, to put it mildly. He studied, like biblical criticism, how they studied the Bible as an academic subject, devoid of any kedusha. So he was the one who innovated the study of Kabbalah, specifically of Zohar, as an academic study, devoid of any reverence or kedusha whatsoever. So, in fact, I'll tell you a story within a story. This, actually, I heard from Joseph Telushkin, who heard it from Herbert Weiner, who wrote 9.5 Mystics. Herbert Weiner, when he was a college student at Hebrew University, he took Gershom Scholem's Kabbalistic Studies class. And in the middle of the class, there was this chassid named Avram Yehuda Chaim. He was the son of Radatz Chaim, Reb David Tzvi or Herschel Chernogover, who was a mashpia. I think he was a chassid going back to the times of the Tzemach Tzedek. B'Seif Yamav, at the end of his life, he lived in Eretz Yisrael. Anyways, he had a son, Avram Yehuda. So anyways, these are the characters. Avram Yehuda Chaim, this Lubavitcher sort of like troublemaker, rolls into the Hebrew University class of Gershom Scholem, teaching like Kabbalistic studies, and Herbert Weiner from 9.5 Mystics is a student. Anyways, this is not even the story that I wanted to tell you. But Avram Yehuda Chaim starts harassing Gershom Scholem, and he says to him, "No, what's the difference between a chassid and a Kabbalistic studies professor?" I don't know. What's the difference between a chassid and a Kabbalistic studies professor? So he says, it's the difference between the balabas and the accountant. A business owner and his bookkeeper. What's the difference? The accountant, the bookkeeper, his whole day he's immersed in numbers. And every one of those numbers represents a dollar, a penny, and he knows exactly how much to the penny came in today, how much to the penny went out today. This is what he lives with. At the end of the day, though, he closes the books, he goes home, and he doesn't have that money. It's not his money. He can track it all. He can tell you exactly to the penny what came in, what went out, but it's not his money. He doesn't have the money. The business owner, the balabas, he doesn't know exactly to the penny what went in today, what went out today. Maybe once a month he gets a general concept of it, but it's his money. It belongs to him. So he says the Kabbalistic studies professor, he's like the accountant. He's Baki Osbos. He knows every single word, every single letter of Zohar, but he doesn't make it his own. He doesn't live according to it. So it's not his money. The chassid, what does he know from Zohar? Bereish Hermanusa de Malka, Golf Galif B'Tihira. Maybe the first few, he knows Kigavna, because it's in the Siddur. He knows a few things, right? But it's his. He owns it. He's like the business owner. Anytime he needs to spend that money, he could spend it because he makes the Kabbalah his life. He lives according to Kabbalah. Okay. Anyways, that's not the story I wanted to tell you. So this guy in Sydney, David Scholem, he tells me this story. He says, after the Yom Kippur War, he starts hanging around Lubavitch in Melbourne, just taking some classes. And his father, a good German Jew, starts freaking out. Oh no, you fell in with these Chassidim. They're going to brainwash you. They're going to make you a radical. So he said, they sent me to my great uncle, the family intellectual, Gershom Scholem, to deprogram me. Yeah. So he says, I went to Yerushalayim, I went to Ir Atika, to the old city, to my great uncle's apartment, and we're sitting and we're talking, and he's like, he says, he was very like cold, very intellectual, and he said the whole conversation was in German, because German is the language of academics. If you're speaking intelligently, you speak in German. And he's grilling me. And I realize as he's grilling me, he's trying to decide whether or not I'm even worth saving. Because if I'm not intelligent, then whatever, who cares? Well, let him do whatever he wants to do. So he's trying to determine, first of all, if I'm smart enough to be worth saving. So he was asking me questions, and I'm answering, and I could tell that he feels that my answers are good enough that, it's worth it for him to continue talking to me. So at one point in the conversation, he says to me, and I realize that this is like the ultimate test. If I don't answer this question right, then he's giving up on me. So he says to me, do you even know the secret of Lubavitch? He says, you're hanging around Lubavitch. You're so enamored with them. Do you even know the secret? By the way, and I should tell you, he told me, he says, I didn't become a Lubavitcher then. I'm not a Lubavitcher now. My father was just freaking out. He's like, I didn't become a Lubavitcher, but I was hanging around them. That was scary enough, right? So he says, his great uncle, Gershom Scholem, the professor of Kabbalistic studies from Hebrew University, he says to me, he says, do you even know the secret of Lubavitch? He said, I thought a second. I knew it was an important question. And I said, yes. They have a general. They have a general. So I stopped him in the middle of him telling me the story. I said, that's remarkable that you felt that was what was unique about Lubavitch. Like, why did that strike you? He says, well, I studied history in college, and I see things in terms of nations and history. And to me, that was clear, that this model of leadership, the Rebbe's power and the ability to mobilize and to send shluchim. And so I said, yeah, they have a general. And I saw it in like military terms, not just a king, a general. Somebody could order the troops. They have a general. So he says, he sort of smiled as if to like give me somewhat, semi-approval, but he couldn't let it be right. He couldn't let it be the ultimate answer. And he says, no. Like almost, but not quite. He says, no. He has an army. So I ask you, what's the secret of Lubavitch? You say they have a general. No, not they have a general. He, meaning the Rebbe, has an army. Now, you say whatever you want about Gershom Scholem, but I've thought about this story so many times. There are a lot of people who claim to be leaders. Show me your army. Show me one person who will devote their life to your marching orders. So to say they have a general, yeah, that's good, but really, what's much more impressive than the fact that the Rebbe was a general is that the Chassidim conduct themselves as an army who follow the orders of the general.